we look at that interactionist approach, the argument is made that we tend to make inferences. We actually tend to extend our knowledge beyond what's actually given in a sentence. We make certain assumptions about what we're hearing, and of course I'm going to give you a few examples of how that operates. But the argument is that we process in a top-down manner. We use our knowledge to define what we're sensing rather than the other way around. A few examples of this are causal inferences. For example, if you look at the sentence displayed, Sharon took an aspirin, her headaches went away. We assume that the aspirin caused her headaches to go away, yet that is not explicated. It does not actually say that. But naturally we make an inference. We go beyond what is written. The same thing applies when we make instrumental inferences. He was banging away at the nail when his dad arrived. Naturally we assume he was using a hammer to hit the nail. But it's not really explicated to us. We fill in a blank based on our typical knowledge of what would be considered appropriate in those scenes. And of course we make anaphoric inferences as well. David is depressed, he is crying. We assume that's the same person. David and he aren't necessarily the same person, that inference. Why this becomes important for us is that we're therefore prone to misunderstanding if we look at the interactionist approach. We infer information, and as a result of that fact, we are very likely to actually see something differently or read something differently or even hear something differently to what it may be. In order to avoid misunderstanding, therefore, the argument is made for a given new contract, our typical way of actually speaking, which is a very simple one. When we construct a sentence, we must first include given information that the listener already knows. This creates common ground between the two of us. And secondly, we must give new information that the listener has not heard yet. So for example, something they're not aware of, which is, I suppose, why we would be speaking in the first place. So for example, you might say to your colleague or your friend today, Anthony started his lecture on human thinking wearing a beard today. Now, in the given information, the hope would be that by virtue of you simply calling me Anthony, they would already be well aware. I'm your cognitive psychology lecturer. That is something that should be common ground. Otherwise, you'd be forced to justify more information around it. The new information, however, would be that I wore a fake beard in the course of all of this. That would be an understanding of how we could actually communicate with one another, and is essentially crucial. Because for any communication to be essential, we need to have common ground or shared information clear between the two of us, and then offer new information. Something that more often than not, we actually overlook, leading to vast, problematic misunderstandings. But ambiguity, while a problematic tendency, is also a beloved one for us. Because one of the things that gets really interesting about ambiguity is that it is implicated in our sense of humor. If you had to think to yourself what the basic neural mechanism of a joke is, or cognitively speaking, how we define humor, it's actually one of the more fascinating aspects of our field, because people like Ramachandran and Goldstein have actually found a formula for any joke, how it all operates. And it's all linguistically mediated. The argument is that all humor is essentially boiled down to what we call a garden path sentence. A sentence that leads you in one particular direction and then at the very end changes direction in an unexpected manner. That garden path sentence must have two essential ingredients to become a joke. First, it must be unexpected. And second, it must be inconsequential. So to give you an example of how that would operate in everyday life, consider the moment where you and your friend were crossing the street and out of nowhere a taxi may have appeared. You didn't recognize it, you didn't see it, and you both narrowly jumped out the road. It just missed you guys. In such situations, people will typically begin to laugh. Why? Because that was very unexpected, but it was inconsequential. The same principle applies when a friend falls over or falls down. We wait for a moment to determine whether they hurt. And once, of course, we see they're not actually in pain, we can't help but start laughing. Why? Because it was unexpected, but inconsequential, no severe consequence. This is the stuff that all jokes are made of. The argument, for example, can be made for any joke to be something unexpected and inconsequential. And an example that I'd use in this regard is a joke I often use if I'm at a particular public forum. Recently I had to MC an event, And in the course of it, at the end, I'd mentioned, so many of you may be aware that I'm a psychologist. And of course, I want you to know, therefore, that if any of you at any point in the night are experiencing distress, or you're really concerned about something, or having a tough time, please know that the bar is over there. An unexpected but inconsequential remark. I led you down a particular path, this garden path, and derailed right at the end to create something unexpected and inconsequential that your brain finds very interesting, almost feels tickled by, and as a result, we find humorous. What this essentially illustrates to us is that context is everything when it comes to language. While we have basic important rules of syntax, and we have basic units of meaning in semantics like morphemes and phonemes, lexical ambiguity is both a source of misunderstanding, but also a source of great joy for us, because it can actually create and change meaning in problematic and fulfilling ways. My hope is that if you understand this, you'll begin to see that while language is a universal meaning, or a universal medium of meaning rather, it is also something that is subject to shaping and changing based on things like the parallel distributed processing model to create for us a source of conflict and misunderstanding, but also a source of unity and joy. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to email me and I'll respond to you shortly.